He mocked the janitor until he found out he'd been watched for weeks. What would you do if your child saw you being humiliated and you couldn't do a thing about it? The sky was a soft gray that Saturday morning, the kind that hinted at rain but never followed through. Jack Turner stood in front of the mirror, carefully smoothing the collar of his old button-down shirt. It was the same one he wore every year on this day, not because it was his best, but because it was clean, unwrinkled, and the only one that still fit without tugging at the seams. Today was Ethan's birthday, 10 years old, a double-digit milestone that Jack had promised to make special, even if their budget barely stretched beyond rent and groceries. He'd saved for weeks, skipping lunch breaks, walking instead of taking the bus, just to afford a meal out. Nothing fancy, just the little diner on Pine Street where they served pancakes all day and let kids eat free on Saturdays. Ethan's eyes lit up when he saw the place. The neon sign buzzed above them as they stepped inside, a warm jingle of bells announcing their entrance. Jack smiled, watching his son press his face to the dessert display, marveling at the whipped cream mountains and rainbow sprinkles. They sat in a corner booth. Jack ordered black coffee and a burger. No sides. Ethan got the birthday special, chocolate chip pancakes stacked high with a candle on top. For a moment it was perfect. Jack listened as Ethan talked about his science project, about the dog he wanted to adopt, about the way Mrs. Palmer still couldn't pronounce his name right in class. Just father and son, just peace. But peace has a way of attracting chaos. The door slammed open. Laughter exploded through the diner. A group of men, loud and heavy with beer breath, stumbled in like they owned the place. Brad Miller led the pack. Tall, still fit from his high school football days, but with a mean streak that had only grown thicker over time. His buddies followed close, eyes already scanning for weakness. And there Jack sat, in his faded shirt, with tired eyes and calloused hands. The perfect target. Brad's voice boomed across the room. "Hey! Didn't know they let the janitor eat with real folks now?" Laughter erupted. Jack lowered his eyes. Ethan looked confused. "Dad, do you know them?" Jack forced a smile. "No, buddy. Just ignore them." But ignoring wasn't an option. Brad sauntered over, beer in hand. "Oh, don't be shy, Turner. You used to clean the locker rooms back in school too, right? Still mopping up puke for a living?" Jack didn't answer. He reached for Ethan's plate, trying to pull it away before Brad knocked it off the table. But he wasn't fast enough. The pancakes hit the floor. Syrup splattered across Jack's shoes. The diner fell silent. Then came the shove. Not hard enough to cause injury, but just enough to make Jack stumble, to make Ethan gasp, to make the entire place see him stagger. Jack didn't raise a hand. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply turned to his son, placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Let's go, Ethan." The boy looked up at him, eyes wide with confusion, maybe even disappointment. They walked out, slow, quiet, dignified in the only way Jack could manage. But what Brad didn't know, what no one in that diner knew, was that Jack Turner had just made a decision, one that would change their lives forever. The walk home was long, not because of the distance. The diner was only 10 blocks from their apartment, but because of the silence that stretched between father and son. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't hold Jack's hand like he usually did. He just walked, eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched, his birthday crown still tilted on his head like a joke that had gone too far. Jack wanted to say something, anything, but what words could make up for what Ethan had just witnessed? By the time they reached their building, a creaking low-rise complex tucked between a pawn shop and a liquor store, the afternoon sky had darkened into a bruised blue. Ethan went straight to his room. No presents to open, no cake to cut. Just silence behind a closed door. Jack sat on the worn-out couch, staring at the wall. In that diner, he had swallowed his pride because he had made a promise long ago to himself, to his dead wife, and to Ethan that he would never let his old life touch this one, that he would be a man of peace, a father, not a weapon, but peace has a price. And sometimes That price is your son looking at you like you're a coward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old silver coin, scratched, faded, but still gleaming. It was the only thing he kept from that life. He turned it over slowly in his fingers as memories began to stir, like ghosts refusing to rest. Before he was Jack Turner, janitor and single dad, he was known by another name. Shadow, not a nickname, a code name. He had been a ghost in the military, part of a black ops unit so deep off the books that most people in intelligence didn't even know they existed. He was a cleaner, a closer, the kind of operative sent in when everything else had failed. Precision, patience, zero emotion. Until one day, everything went wrong. A mission in South America. Classified, explosive, dirty, beyond repair. He had followed orders. He had done what needed to be done. But when the smoke cleared, the politicians washed their hands and Jack's unit was burned. Left behind, disavowed. That was when he disappeared. Fake death, new identity, new life. A woman he loved, a son he swore to protect, and a vow never to be that man again. But now that man was awake again. In Ethan's room, the boy sat on his bed, legs crossed, eyes misty. He didn't cry, not out loud, but his heart did. Not just for the ruined pancakes or the spilled syrup, but for something deeper. A kind of shame that didn't belong to him, but still clung to him like a shadow. He remembered the look on his father's face. Not fear, not anger, just restraint. And that confused him even more. Why didn't his dad fight back? Why did he let them win? In that moment, something shifted inside Ethan too. A question formed in his young heart, one that would haunt him until it was answered. Who is my father, really? And just a room away, Jack Turner finally stood up. He walked to the hallway, to a section of wall no one would ever think to inspect. He slid his fingers along the molding until he found the catch. A soft click, a hidden panel. Inside, darkness, until he pulled it open. What lay behind it was a memory, a ghost, a warning. Rows of weapons, oiled, ready, stacks of documents, ID cards, satellite maps, a set of gloves he hadn't worn in over a decade, and at the very back, the case. He opened it. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a combat knife with his old unit's symbol etched into the blade. A crow in flight. He didn't pick it up. Not yet. But as he stared into the case, the question in his mind was no longer, should I? It was, how far do I let this go before I remind them who they're dealing with? Because the line had been crossed, and Jack Turner was done being quiet. The following Monday, Jack returned to work at the suburban shopping mall where he cleaned after hours. Same faded uniform, same mop in hand, same silent routine. But something inside him had changed. He moved through the empty halls with the same quiet precision, but his eyes weren't just watching trash on the floor anymore. They were studying exits, cameras, security blind spots. It was second nature, like muscle memory waking up after years of sleep. Jack wasn't just mopping floors now, he was gathering intel. He had seen Brad before, not just at the diner. Brad owned a small gym in the same mall, Iron Core Fitness, plastered with motivational posters and fake smiles. His face was all over social media, flexing in front of mirrors, calling himself a mindset coach. Jack had walked past that place 100 times, always ignored, always invisible. That night, as Jack swept outside the glass doors, Brad came out laughing with two of his buddies, loud again, drunk again, and full of venom. "Hey! Look who's still scrubbing floors," Brad barked, his voice echoing down the hallway. Jack kept sweeping. "Seriously, dude, you got no shame. You clean toilets all night and call that a life?" The other men chuckled, emboldened. Jack didn't look up. He just said softly, "You ever think about what people carry that you can't see?" Brad sneered. "What, like your loser dreams?" Then he spat. Right at Jack's shoes. It was deliberate, the kind of move a man makes when he's absolutely sure the other man won't do a thing. And Jack didn't. He just stared at the wet spit sliding down his boot. Then he looked up, straight into Brad's eyes, and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was quiet, cold, empty. Brad didn't understand it. Not yet. But something about it unsettled him. Still, he brushed it off. "Freak," he muttered, walking away. But Jack kept smiling. Later that night, while the mall was closed and security was down to a skeleton crew, Jack visited the gym. He didn't break in. He had a key, not an actual one, but he'd memorized the lock brand, the keypad model, and the weak point in the glass from where they'd thrown a chair 2 years ago. One soft press, one firm pull, and the door whispered open. He didn't touch anything, didn't steal, didn't break. He just walked through the place like a ghost, a shadow. He noted the weights Brad used, the supplements he bought, the locker he used, the timestamp on the security cameras, and before leaving, he moved one single dumbbell by exactly 2 inches. Just enough for Brad to notice it had moved, but not enough to prove anyone had been there. The next day, Brad stared at the dumbbell for 5 full minutes. His brow furrowed. He asked his staff if anyone had used it. They shrugged, said no, said the cameras showed nothing. He laughed it off. Too loud, too forced, but something inside him shifted. Doubt. A few nights later, Jack walked Ethan home from school. The boy had been quieter than usual all week, unsure how to face his father, unsure what to feel. They passed a corner store, and Jack offered to buy him ice cream. Ethan shook his head. "I'm not hungry." Jack crouched in front of him. "Ethan, look at me." The boy hesitated, then met his eyes. "You think I'm weak, don't you?" Jack asked. Ethan bit his lip. "They laughed at you. They pushed you. You just let them." Jack nodded slowly. "Sometimes, son," he said softly, "the loudest people are the most afraid, and sometimes the strongest men are the ones who wait." Ethan didn't fully understand, but he would. That night, Jack made another visit. Brad's car, a brand new muscle car with custom rims, was parked outside his gated condo. By morning, the tires were untouched. The body was pristine, but the engine wouldn't start. Not because it was sabotaged in any obvious way. No wires cut, no fluids drained. Jack had simply installed a remote kill switch, one he could activate, or not. Brad cursed, kicked the tire, called for a tow. And when he got back to his condo, there was a message written in the fog of his bathroom mirror. "How's the view from the top?" He blinked, wiped it, told himself it was a prank, but deep down, he knew. Someone was watching, and the humiliation he had once dished out so easily was about to come back to him piece by piece. Brad stopped sleeping. Not because of guilt, he didn't have much of that, but because the fear had started to seep into places even his ego couldn't block. Every night, something small shifted. A drawer left open that he swore he had closed. His toothbrush replaced with one still sealed in plastic. His dog, a hulking Rottweiler named Duke, barking at empty hallways in the middle of the night, refusing to enter the kitchen where Brad found a single glove left on the counter. A black leather glove, his size, but not his. He changed the locks, installed extra cameras, slept with a bat under his bed. But nothing stopped it, because there was nothing to stop. No one ever broke in. Nothing was ever taken. And yet, he felt invaded every moment. At the gym, his staff noticed the change, the way Brad snapped at them for no reason. How he'd jump when someone called his name. How he stopped posting on social media, no longer the confident coach in sunglasses and tank tops, but a man shrinking inside his own skin. His friends, the ones who had laughed with him at the diner, began to distance themselves, not because they were scared, but because they too had started feeling it. Kyle, the biggest of the crew, had come home one night to find his bedroom wallpaper cut down the middle, not torn, cut, with surgical precision. His wife thought it was a robbery until they saw the security footage. Nothing. No one, just one frame for half a second, a silhouette in the backyard, a man standing still, looking straight at the camera. but the face was shadowed. He filed a police report. They shrugged. No forced entry, no evidence, only fear. The next night, his garage door opened and closed 5 times in a row, triggered remotely. He disconnected the system. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. No voice, just breathing. It went on for a full minute, and then a whisper. Next time, knock. Kyle left town the next morning. But Brad couldn't run. Not yet. He needed to know. He needed to see who was doing this. So he went back to the diner. Same booth, same spot where it all started. He asked the waitress, pretending to be casual. That guy I pushed a couple weeks ago, the janitor. What's his story? The waitress stiffened. Jack, he's a good man. Comes here once a month with his kid. Doesn't bother anyone. Brad nodded. Right. You know where he lives? She gave him a look. Why? So you can bully him again? Brad smiled. No, I just want to apologize. He didn't. That night, he parked 2 blocks away from Jack's building, waited, watched. At 10:42 p.m., the lights in Jack's apartment went dark. Brad stepped out of the car, walked slowly, quietly, every part of him tense. But he didn't realize that while he was watching, he was also being watched. From a rooftop across the street, Jack lay prone, his old sniper scope tracking every move, not with intent to shoot, but to study, to learn, to calculate. Brad reached the building's front door. It was locked. He reached for the handle anyway. It opened too easily. He stepped into the hallway. Silence. No lights. He moved slowly toward the stairs, each step louder than the last in his pounding ears. Then, a click. The hallway lights flickered on. Every wall was covered in black and white photos of him, sleeping, showering, sitting in his car. Dozens of angles, dozens of dates, all taken without his knowledge. His knees buckled. He backed away, heart hammering. He didn't scream, not because he wasn't terrified, but because something deeper kicked in. Shame. For the first time in his adult life, Brad Miller felt it. Real, raw, suffocating shame. He ran. But behind a vent, hidden in the ceiling duct, Jack watched him go, calm, silent, unreadable. Because this wasn't rage, this was discipline, a quiet, relentless dismantling of a man who thought he would never be touched. And Jack had only just begun. Brad didn't go to the gym the next day. He didn't go to work at all. He stayed in bed with the curtains drawn, phone powered off, and a baseball bat across his lap. Every creak in the floorboards above him made him flinch. Every gust of wind against the window felt like a warning. He had lost weight. His face, once smug and sun-kissed, now looked pale and hollow. He hadn't shaved in days. The alpha was unraveling, and deep down, he knew why. The janitor, the one he humiliated in front of his son, he needed answers, real ones. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He called an old contact, a guy who owed him favors from back in his college football days, now working in a private security firm with access to background intel. I need a full workup on a guy, Brad said. Name's Jack Turner, lives near 5th and Monroe, works as a janitor. The man hesitated on the line. That all you got? That's all I need. He's nothing. There was silence. Then, I'll see what I can find. 3 hours later, Brad got a text. Call me now. Brad did. The voice on the other end was low, urgent. Where did you say this guy works again? Why? What'd you find? I didn't find anything. That's the problem. No government records. No employment history before 10 years ago. His name appears on a lease and a janitorial payroll. And that's it, like he didn't exist before that. Brad scoffed. So what? He's a nobody. No, Brad, he's not a nobody. He's a ghost. The voice paused, then continued even lower. You ever heard of something called Project Black Veil? Brad blinked. No, should I? You shouldn't. And if this guy's connected to it, you're already in deeper than you can handle. Burn your bridges. Walk away. Don't look back. Click. Brad stared at the phone. Then, for the first time in years, he started crying. That night, Jack stood on the rooftop of a downtown hotel, dressed in all black, the wind cold against his face. Below him, Brad sat in a bar alone, nursing a drink with trembling hands. Jack didn't need to be close anymore. He had done what he came to do, but there was one thing left. He sent a message, a simple envelope left on Brad's windshield. Inside, a photograph, not of Brad, not of the diner, but of Ethan sitting at the park, smiling, holding a balloon. On the back, written in neat, sharp handwriting, "Next time I won't be so kind." Brad collapsed. He didn't call the cops. He didn't tell his friends. He just disappeared. Quit the gym, sold his car, moved out of the condo. He left town 2 days later, quietly, like a man fleeing a ghost he could never outrun. And Jack? Jack went home, put the equipment back in the wall, closed the panel, sat on the couch and waited for Ethan to come home from school. When the boy walked through the door, Jack was there, calm, steady. Ethan walked over and hugged him. "Hey, Dad." Jack held him close. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked. Jack looked into his eyes. "Everything's just fine now." Because justice had been served, and not with fists, not with bullets, but with fear, precision, and silence. Exactly how Shadow was trained. Weeks passed. Autumn came gently, blanketing the neighborhood in golden leaves and early dusk. The diner on Pine Street still served its pancakes. The mall still played its soft jazz on loop. And the world moved on, unaware that a storm had come and gone, leaving no broken glass, no gunfire, no headlines, just silence and peace. Jack Turner resumed his quiet life, sweeping floors, taking Ethan to school, folding laundry with the same slow grace as always. But something had changed between them. Not in words, in eyes. Ethan didn't look at his father with confusion anymore. He looked at him with understanding, respect, and something deeper, trust. Because, while other kids boasted about dads who were doctors or businessmen or ran marathons, Ethan now knew a different truth. His father wasn't a hero in the way cartoons showed. He was something rarer, a man who could destroy, but chose not to. A man who had every right to strike, but chose patience instead. One Sunday afternoon, as they sat on a park bench sharing a sandwich, Ethan finally asked, "Why didn't you fight back that day, when they pushed you?" Jack thought for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Because fighting isn't always about swinging first. Sometimes it's about knowing when to wait and who you're really protecting." Ethan nodded, slowly, like a boy who finally felt safe in a world that didn't always feel fair. In the end, Brad Miller became a ghost himself, a name people barely remembered, a face that no longer showed up on fitness ads or coaching posters. Rumors swirled, of course. Mental